Ok, let's go. Bon, je fais une petite introduction. السلام عليكم، مرحبا بكم كاع معنا اليوم رانا هنا كاين دي جون بزاير، كاين دي جون با تونيزي، اسبيرون غدوه يكونوا معنا دي جون مروك. Et ça sera le Africa Geek Hangout, Inch'Allah. Aujourd'hui, Hussam il va nous présenter AngularJS. نعطولو pour faire la présentation تاعو. Et puis on aura une discussion معاه. هو يجيري لو هانغاوت كيما يحب، الا حب يدير لك كيستيون في لا ميزور ولا حتى الاخر. حسام سي لو شيف اليوم. تفضل حسام.
السلام عليكم، مرحبا بكم. داير لي دواعي الكونيكسيون تالمو راهي مع البريزونطاسيون. دونك بسم الله. اسكو الكونيكسيون اسكو راه تبان كل لا بريزونطاسيون؟
Pour le moment non, راهي فيجي تسمى.
اوكي très bien. دونك حنبدا. اوكي
Très bien.
Donc bienvenue et welcome to AngularJS 1.x in Desert Geek Hangouts. My name is Hussam and I live in Blida, which is in Algeria, and I'm very pleased to be with Desert Hangouts when I'm going to share my modest expertise with AngularJS. ان شاء الله برك هذه تكون برك سيري تاع الهانج اوت وين رانا نحكيو على انجلر 1 انجلر 2 ايونيك 1 امام اذا قدرنا نديرو ايونيك 2 اي بوي نجوزو ديريكتومون لنيتيف سكريبت. دونك ان شاء الله مع بتيت موتيفاسيون وشويه خدمه نسي كيفاش نكوفريو كاع الحفايس اللي عندهم ريلاسيون ولا اللي يكونوا عندهم ريلاسيون مع انجلر جي اس. نبداو. Bon, je suis étudiant, maintenant on traîne des applications hybrides. Je travaille basiquement avec Node.js et AngularJS et j'aime bien Firebase et MongoDB. Bon, باش نبدا في الحكايه تاع Node.js في حكايه AngularJS نديرو حكايه. Did you use Angular before? اسكو بيناتنا كاين اللي بيناتنا اللي خدم بانجولار قبل؟ اسكو كاين في سونداج اسكو فيها Angular من قبل؟ Cool, great. So, what if I told you that Angular now is in version 2? So it is not clear, and yeah, we are in version 2, and we are in version 2 and in beta 10. Beta 10. What is Angular? So let's explain what is Angular. So we call it Angular 1. So let's define it. Angular 1 is HTML enhanced for web apps. So the AngularJS team defined their framework as an enhancement to the HTML. And why HTML? Because we have many new things within it, and we have what we call tags. We have now in HTML5 the power of JavaScript is quite spread, and the fact that AngularJS used that power and enhanced it and gave us like an extended version of HTML. So that's why we call it enhanced for web apps. And this is exactly what Angular 1 is all about. It is dedicated framework for web only? No. The answer is no. And we found Angular even in mobile. So we find it represented in Ionic, and we can have the chance, inshallah, to talk about it. And I hope to have the chance to talk about it in future Hangouts. And lately, we found it native script. So native script created by Cleric, and I already talked and wrote about it an article or two, and you can find it in my blog and in my the DZ developers group and etc. And what makes AngularJS? Well, simply everything. Everything is special about AngularJS, and I'm going to explain just why. And also, because we are in Angular 2, let's define it. Angular 2 is a development platform for building mobile and desktop applications. So we went from enhancement for creating apps for mobile and even desktop only, the web representative in like normal desktop application. And we find that quite because Electron, and Electron built by the folks at GitHub, and it let us create like a platform application for desktop. I mean, like native apps for even Linux and Windows using Electron and using web technologies. So that's Power, and also mobile, mobile representative in Ionic and even in native script. So we are going to talk about it both and all of that in upcoming Hangouts, inshallah. So yeah, that's very, very awesome and cool. So why we use Angular 1 or even care about Angular 2? Let's see, because simply it's built by Google. And also in the case of Angular 2, it's built using TypeScript. So TypeScript mimic the ECMAScript 15 or ECMAScript 6 in JavaScript 6. Also, but we have now some community. So all the community support Angular 1 and Angular 2, and it is quite fascinating to find all the question over Stack Overflow, and you won't be lost in any kind of ways. And also we got of GitHub, because we have like many projects that use AngularJS, and they are quite open, so we can as developers or as explorers to take a look and learn from them. So let's move directly to a demo. For that manner, I created a simple application. This application were built using Angular 1, and it is a fairly simple application, and I used Bootstrap for simple styling, and that's it. We have like this view, we have this one, and we have these things. It is not, but now let's talk more about the code and how I built such thing. So let's go directly to the front. And start everything from scratch. Now, let's suppose that we are in a web app. And in web apps, well, we have index.html. In our case, and when we use AngularJS, we are building what is known as SPA, or single page applications. Single page applications is the future of web apps, because we deleted the fact that we are and deleted the fact that we need Ajax and or depend on Ajax that in a heavy way. And I will tell you just what. Let's suppose we are in Gmail or in Facebook, and those apps like have many views. And when we talk about views, we talk about like links and pages and everything, like the home. Then we go to the friends list, and then we go to profile, events, page, etc. So for us, if we use a traditional architecture, we are going to talk or use mainly Ajax. So Ajax everywhere, and Ajax to pull out our pages from the backend, and also pull from the backend, and in order to the user. So in order the user to see it, we have to bring it from the backend, and for us there's a lot of flow and waiting time. So Ajax saved our life, but make our application a bit.
Hussam خرج apparemment problème de connexion. Espérons qu'il يولي rapidement. انا شنو فيك يا حسام وراك؟ ما راكش كونيكتي كاع. عاود خرج، عاود خرج من الهانج اوت وعاود دخل. اوكي. اي رابيدو. معمر الهانج اوت. لا لا. نسحقوا بلاصه هنا لحسام، لازمنا نضحوا بواحد. راح عاود درك، عاود دخل. سي بون. اوكي يلا هاتي.
Hello guys.
Hello.
Hello.
برقول لي برك من حبست خاطر was like talking and I get it نسيت روحي ما عم بالي ما كنتش مكونيكتي. برقول لي برك من حبست باش نعاود نولي.
So please.
من الاول كاع.
No. عاود ولا
from TypeScript and Angular.
script أنا هنا.
TypeScript أيوة yes.
Please.
TypeScript من البريزنتاسيون.
بالذي. اسمه هي.
Yes.
No TypeScript. اوكي مصباح وانا نحكي. اوكي. Weird. This is weird. اوكي معليش. نبدأ بحسن. كونيكسيون راهي شوية.
غزي.
This is weird. Okay. So let's come back, and like I said, Angular to use TypeScript. And why TypeScript? Because TypeScript mimic the ECMAScript 2015 or JavaScript version 6, and that's exactly why we are using, or JavaScript now is the future of like JavaScript in general, and also because of the heavy involvement of the community via Stack Overflow. So you can find everything and anything over Stack Overflow, okay? And also because we use, because of GitHub. GitHub now become like the source for every kind of sources. And GitHub, we can find modules, we can find code, we can find code labs, and everything that we have in GitHub, and for the expert in order to contribute, and for the explorer in order to like learn. So now let's move to the demo, okay? So far so good?
Yes.
Great. So now let's move to an application I built. So this is the application I built for the sake of this Hangout, and I built it using AngularJS, and for the sake of style, I used Bootstrap. So it's a simple application, nothing fancy, but the most thing about it is the code behind it. So let's move to this, or more directly to code. In our application, or in any application, have the index.html file, and it is a bunch of tags. Like we have the head, we have body, and have scripts. And I went to the AngularJS site and downloaded the AngularJS file. And it's the normal way that we normally work. We go to the website and download the file. But I'm going to explain how we can like get all this done by using build tools later on if we have time. Now let's explain the code behind this application. I have like a body and a nav tag for this thing, like or the navigation. Nothing fancy. And then we have this tag or this directive that named by UI view. And we are going to explain what is UI view in just a second. Then I have the Angular UI router, and I will explain that later on, inshallah. And also we have my own JavaScript code. But the thing that will differentiate any application from AngularJS application is the ng app directive. And what is directive? Like I said before, AngularJS Angular 1 is what we call enhanced HTML. So we introduced, or Angular team, a new set of directives, or what we call attribute. If you are working with HTML, you're going to recognize it as attribute. So this attribute is going to be named Angular ng app, and every attribute created by the AngularJS will be prefixed by ng. And for this thing, or my application would be called DZ. Okay, so my AngularJS application named DZ, and this tag will differentiate my app from any other app, or will and how so? This tag will say to AngularJS, here's the thing, I want to build AngularJS application, not jQuery. I want to use jQuery or use Backbone. I want to use Backbone. I want to use Ember or anything, but I want to use Angular. So this is the thing that will differentiate my app from any app. Now let's move to the code behind it. So I included this code, or app.js. So let's explain, or let's see the code behind it. I create or use a self-invoking function, and what is this thing? What we're going to help us is to create what we call a singleton. And what is singleton? A singleton is a data or design pattern in any programming language. So like most of modern programming language have what we call singleton pattern, and singleton pattern will help us later on in memory keeping and everything beyond. So we can read about it later on, inshallah. And I'm working with the use of strict mode, so we can have a little bit of like fancy code or clean code. Then I start my application. So far so good. Okay, no problem.
Yes.
Okay. Great. So, in order to start any AngularJS application, we need to write modules. And what is modules? Let's suppose modules, or let's call them for now like application. But in the reality, modules are like containers, and containers will have stuff on them. So this container will have everything that AngularJS have. So controllers, factories, services, constant, and everything in beyond. And even we have the power of creating new tags or new attributes in our application that we call directives. So like I explained before, Angular.modules, and this is the name of our application, and it is mandatory, so we can't build any application without the use of modules. Then I named it DZ, so we are in here. So DZ, a quick information, the ng app directives is used in the HTML code or in the body tag, but we can't use it on the head. So you can't include it on the head or in the title or in the links or anything that included in the head tag, because simply the application won't run. Trust me, I use it and I spent like 3 to 4 hours debugging my application, and I didn't know anything. But then I noticed that my ng app tag is supposed to be either in HTML or in the body tag. So don't make this mistake. Put it either in the HTML tag, the body, or any other tag inside the body. Okay, so let's move on with our code. So a comma, then an array. So this array, the meaning of the array is that my module or my application will depend on this module. And why so? Because we are in the modern web development, and in the modern web development, our application is or our application has to respect the SOC methodology, or separation of concerns. And what we mean by separation of concerns is that we are not in the C code or in structural programming. Our application will be like, or one file going to host tens and millions of lines of code and do absolutely everything. But later, if we have a single mistake or a single missing semicolon, we are not going to find it like forever. But if we use the separation of concern, our application will be separated in modules, and each module or each part of our code will do a specific thing. And this this code will be easily testable, or will be testable right away using like unit testing and everything, but will be also easy for our eyes to read and debug and read the meaning or find out the meaning of its content. So it's simple as that. Don't mess up your code, but separate your concerns and put each concern in a single file or in single modules. Therefore, you will have like a clean application. Then we have the config, and also we have another function that's called run. So the config and the run functions, we're going to launch whenever our application launched. So they are like launched in compile time. So in order to start the application, our application will start using the config and the run. So then go to the other compile time function. Then I said I wanted the state providers, URL providers. They are all for what we call routings. So links and everything beyond. So links. So let's call them links for now, and let's talk about another thing. So guys, so far so good? Any questions? Okay. So can I move on? Okay, great.
Okay, go ahead.
Then we have another thing. We explained that we have modules. Now let's go to another thing. We have controllers, and what the controllers really do is controlling my view or my page. So any web page or a page or view in our case will be controlled by a controller. It is as simple as that. And this page, for instance, home.html will be controlled by the home controller.js. And we have like a special naming because, like I said, we have the SOC, or the separation of concerns. And here we go. And so we can define a controller. We create or write it like so, Angular.modules DZ. So we are clearly in the DZ module or DZ application. And I will add a new controller. We name it home controller, and then give it a behavior or comportement. And this behavior will be represented in a function, and this function will have everything that concern our home.html file. So it is as simple as that. Everything or any behavior or any code we're going to run on this theme view will be controlled by this code, or everything that will be hosted in here. Okay? Then we have another thing. We have another component or another piece of the puzzle that we call factory. So we have factories, and this is another kind of written or writing, because here, or let me, before talking about the factories, let me introduce another writing manner. So we have this writing manner. We have the Angular modules, then controllers, then the name of the controllers, then a function, and also we have this thing. This kind of or this manner, when we introduce first our function and give it like behavior within it, then forget about this line of code for the moment. Then we introduce our controller to our module or add. Okay. Great. Now let's move to the factories. And the factories don't have any views to work on, because factories are, or the main thing that the factories focus on is getting the data and sending the data. So let me put it this way, it is what will handle our Ajax application or Ajax calls from gets to post to delete and everything beyond. So they will bring us data and we will send data through them. Okay? And also, this is another way we can write our code. And like so, I introduced my function first, then forget about this line, then I went to my declaration and I said Angular module, DZ, or my application. You have a factory that named data factory and have the following behavior, which is represented in this function. Okay, so factories get the data, controllers control the view. Now let's move to another piece of the puzzle and say application. No, let's talk about the routing. Like I said, AngularJS respects the SOC. So AngularJS in the beginning was one chunk of code, and it wasn't modular, and it was like everything do everything. One piece of code that have routings, that have storage, that have DOM controlling, that have everything. So this was quite messy and was quite sad for web developers because it wasn't fast enough. Therefore, the new, or I guess the version 1 or 0.10 get rid of everything that make us sad. Let me say it sad, and put everything in a single model. So if we want routing, or we go and bring the module the module that will be or will host the routing. So if we want another thing, we go and bring its model. So we don't have everything in one code base or in the AngularJS file. This is what we get through SOC, or separation of concerns. The new, or therefore they created what they call NG router. And the NG router is a module that the Angular team create, and its main job is to make our application routing ready. So if we want to create routes within our application, we go and bring the router, or the router module, or the NG router. But the NG router have many flaws, and therefore I don't want or like to use it. Therefore, I use another module or another component. And this component called UI router. So there is a team behind it, they create this thing that's called UI router, and its main job is to configure and make our application router ready. Therefore, like I said, in our application we have many files and many modules, and we don't want to get everything, but we want a single file that abstract a single functionalities, and that those functionalities will be used in our application. So if you are a computer science student, you're going to recognize this through the new Unix system, because it is like a monolithic architecture. If a single thing, so a single module do a single job. We don't want like one module to do everything. So it is SOC again and again and again. And why I'm talking about it, because our application need to be like so, or our application need to be SOC ready. Why? I have a question. If the Angular router is fine, why other dependencies as UI router? Okay, so we have the ng router. It is not included in the AngularJS, so we need to download it and configure our application using it. But for me personally, I don't like to use Angular router. I don't like to use the ng router. I use the UI router. It is another module and do the same thing, but for me, give me another power that it is more advanced and like a resolver. So we don't have such thing in the ng routers. But since we are using the Angular 1.5.1, we have what we call a new router, or the ng new router, that mimic the Angular 2 router. Okay, so it's another thing, and it's completely a completely other thing, because in the new router we use another style, and for the moment, since we are all, or the major application use 1.3 max, so UI router is quite good and quite like do the thing perfectly. Okay, did I answer your question, Mohammed? Just write it down. No, not really. So tell me exactly what you want, or let us keep it later on, inshallah. Okay, so put your question and we will talk about it later on. Okay. Now, in order to define our routes, we use the state provider, and the state provider is bundled within the UI router. So the UI router is a module, and a module contains functions or factories or services. So the state provider is a service provided by the UI router module. URL router provider is also part of it. Then I said URL router provider, otherwise go to slash. So this thing we're going to be discussed as AngularJS. If you find any, or if the user gave you any kind of routes that you don't recognize, go directly to this link, or to the main, or to the root link. Otherwise, go to another links represented below. So if I want to go to slash, it's going to show me or if I want to go to the main or to the root level of my application, we're going to find ourselves in the home.html, and the home.html contain another code here. So it contains the Jabotron thing, and this is it mainly. So it only contains this thing, and also have this tag, Hangout outline, row with 2 buttons, and this thing also. So we don't have the navbar because navbar is on the index.html. So this thing is basically a view, and this view will be controlled using home controller. Okay. So for the moment, I tell my application to go. If the user went to the root level, show him the template in my app, the template in my the template in this link, and then give him a controller, and this controller is the home controller, and that's it, basically. So we are now in the root. We are in the root level of my application, and the AngularJS showed me this page. So this fragment of code is the home.html. So I won't change the page or everything within the page, but I will change a simple or a small fragment of it. Then I defined another route called /2ways, and the /2ways will show me another fragment hosted in the 2.html file within here. So a small chunk of data or small chunk of tags. So nothing or no application, but a small fragment of it. Then it's controlled by another controller named the toController, like I explained before. So the controller controls my 2.html. Simple. Then we have another state or another route called data, and my data or this link we're going to be hosted or shown using this data.html file. Okay, so now let's see how that runs. So when I go to or I want to go to the two-way data, I create this and I go directly to my view or to this chunk of code in the 2.html. So it's a simple H1 code. Welcome to two-way data binding. Then we have a label and we have an input. Then we have an H3. So you find the nav bar again. So we change only the chunk or the view in here. And now you're going to ask yourself, who is responsible of changing the view? Now, because I'm using UI router gave me another directive or another attribute called UI view. So my chunks of code or my small fragment of code will be or will live in this container or in this div. It's not hardly coded, but it loads dynamically due to demand. So if I want to go to another application, I go back and then I go to get data thing. Okay, simple as that. So this is outside of the box what we call routing. So is it clear? UI router can work with part of page. So UI router, we're going to define routes. And for us, in the single page application way, we don't have like the normal routes. We have routes within the route. Okay? So how that is working, we have a single page or we have the index.html page, and it is the thing from the navbar and everything in beyond. And also have fragments. So our fragments will live in the index.html. Okay? And how it's going to be run, is due to this configuration. So it's like configuration. I have states or I have like routes, and state is the naming used in the URL router. And I have another state. It is another link or another route. I have like another one or another state. And if you notice here, I have this new routing manner. So I am not in the slash or the slash thing directly, like in here. For instance, I am now in the slash hash slash or another slash. So now we are living in a routing within a routing. Okay, so we take mainly the basic app or the first app or the first page represented in the index.html. Then we load our fragments depending on the need. Okay. Okay. Is it clear?
Okay.
Okay. Now let's move to another thing, or one of the things that make our.
Pardon, avant de sauter cette partie, d'aller vers une autre partie. Je comprends que la application state est contrôlée par le router. Alors, si le navigateur supporte pas, j'imagine, le hash, alors notre application state marche pas. On peut pas avoir le switch entre les pages. C'est ça.
Ok. اوكي très bien. donc باك نقول لك عفسه لو هاش هذاك الهاش نقدروا حنا برك نقدروا نحوه كيما نحبوا هنايا tu vois donc on peut utiliser directement كيما نقولوا it's the default way the hash يجي directement exister في اللينكس تاعي ou bien نقدروا نحوه directement utilisant une ligne de code اللي راح تنحي لي هذا الهاش اوكي دونك ماشي لازم يجي هذا الهاش مي AngularJS مخدومه بتمشي.
Je m'intéresse pas au hash. Je veux comment mon application state soit toujours fonctionnelle, sans dépendance au router. Est-ce que je peux avoir ça?
ما تقدرش.
اوكي.
وعلاش؟ نقول لك علاش خاطرش داخل كما قلت لك we have routes within a route. رانا دوكا في السلاش you see and everything will be after the hash or then a slash will be our view. L'application تاعنا will work regarding البراوزر تاعك because it's written like so. Angular مخدومه باش يمشي في كامل البراوزرز. اوكي مام لو هاش سلاش راح يمشي. اوكي elle est configurable.
Ma question était est-ce que je peux avoir le switch de mon state sans dépendance au router? Est-ce que je peux avoir ça? Oui, non?
Non, you can't.
D'accord, c'est ce que je veux savoir.
Ok.
Merci.
خاطر الراوتر هو اللي حيكون ريسبونسابل باش يلونسي لي فيو تاعي فهمتني؟
فهمتك مي d'après votre expérience مع Angular est-ce qu'on doit avoir le router باش نديروا l'application state? Est-ce qu'on est obligé d'utiliser?
Oui, لازم يكون فيها الراوتر.
اوكي est-ce que c'est bien ou non هكذا؟
ماشي سي بيان او نو لا باش تخدم ابليكاسيون في انجولار مام ابليكاسيون في باك بون ولا كي عفسه لازم تسحق لو موديل تاع الراوتر لازم يكون.
D'accord. Pas mal de fois, je peux avoir le application state sans baser sur le router. Parce que mon application state peut être sur une petite partie de le widget, fait une application. Alors, je parle pas dans un cadre de SPA, mais des fois, une simple widget peut être compliquée plus qu'une application SPA. Une simple widget.
فهمتك. بهذيك السامبل ويدجت جست برك دير اسمه. اوكي كمل.
Pour moi, c'est mon avis personnel, c'est une petite faiblesse.
اوكي. ما راح نحكيو على هذاك الشيء محمد مع الله ان شاء الله. جزاك الله فيكم كملوا كامل لي بارتي اللي اكزيستي في انجلترا. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, très bien. So now نمشيو شويه العفسه اللي خلات انجولار مع الاول تجيب بزاف لاتونسيون اللي هي two way data binding. So we go to another route called two ways, and now we have a two-way data binding. So what is two-way data binding? Is the real-time data changing in both the view and the middle tier represented in our controller. Okay, so when I write hi, it's going to update it in real time. Okay, so this is what we call the two-way data binding, and it is highly important because sometimes in order to do such behavior we have to do lots and lots and lots of stuff. Okay, if you built any application using JavaScript before, and you want to make such thing, you're going to have lots and lots of lines of code in order to have such thing. Okay, from getting the ID and getting the content and getting another ID for the label here and update it accordingly. So it is painful for us. Therefore, two-way data binding get rid of many working loads. Okay, so far so good. Let's move to another thing. Because now the two-way data binding is not hot like it was, therefore we're going to move to another part. Now let's suppose that we want, or let's suppose that we have a backend and we want to get some data, and this data we're going to get basically, or whether we love it or hate it, using Ajax. Therefore the AngularJS team created another module called the $HTTP, and I have it here. So if we are using, or if you come across any application or any AngularJS application in specific, and you find anything prefixed with $, it is basically or clearly AngularJS module. So AngularJS core team created a core modules, or the things bundled with our application that we can't get elsewhere, and bundle it within our application. To handle the HTTP cores, we have the $HTTP, and we have also another module called ng-resource. ng-resource is not bundled with my application, and we can download it and install it accordingly and include it in our app here. So like I said, any other module that our application is going to depend on will be listed here. Now let's talk about the data, and here I have a single, or I don't need this array. Let me get rid of it. Then now let's talk about what I have done here. In the AngularJS factory or pattern, or the way that we write AngularJS factories, we use what we call the revealing pattern. So the revealing pattern is another software and or software development or software building design pattern that lets reveal everything like so. So I write return, then I opened my two things that I named my function. So get data, 2 points, I named it function. Then this function, we're going to return an HTTP call, and it is called to my backend, so hosted in localhost 2.3000/users. So I want to get all the resources from my backend in the /users. I have created a small backend using Node.js, and then I used Express to handle my HTTP calls. Then we have a single, or we have an array. Then a function, and also I use the faker module, so I can like mimic the data I get in order to get some dummy data. Then I have here my code. So /users are going to get me all the users in, let me say, database for now. And when we go to using Postman, so when I go to localhost /users and perform a GET request, I will get the following stuff. So I have users, and each user is defined by a name, an email, a job, phone number, and an avatar, or image. And that's it. So this is my simple backend. So now what I have done here is I created or mimicked a backend. Then I performed a simple code, and I said $HTTP get me all the resources that exist in the /users. When we are talking about the modern web development or spas in general, we're going to have 2 to 3 layers. Why so? Because things are not bundled anymore like it was, and also because we have the separation of concerns. So my backend would be hosted in a port alone, and my front end also going to be hosted whether in the same port or in another port, and then or simply not bundled within each other. So there is no dependencies between the two applications. Therefore, we have what we call now the backend engineers or developers, and also we have the front end developers or engineers. So each one do his job. So the backend, we're going to handle all the HTTP calls, my data, the security, the DB, and everything in beyond. And the front end, which we are doing now, or be creating an AngularJS application, is what we call front end. So we have a resources, or have a resource called users hosted on my database in my backend, and I got it via the HTTP model. So I run simple command or simple line of code. I return the call directly. So so I didn't do anything with the data, and also because the $HTTP is asynchronous. How so? Let's go to another thing here. Asynchronous. So our UI won't be blocked during the execution time. This is what we call by asynchronous code. So we don't have the blocked UI, so we can do anything with our UI until I get my data. As simple as that. So now I included my factory in my controller. So how so and why so? Because we need data in our application, and because the controller can do anything but controlling the page, we bring another piece of code or service and injected in our application or in our controller. Therefore, we say data factory, this data factory dot data. When you get a successful call, or like I write here, a 200 OK call, get me all the data. Get me all the data. So my result from my $HTTP get will be hosted in this variable. And then I said, or say scope.users equal data. Now let's see the result of this code. Then we're going to explain what the scope is. So now we have, or I have another route called get data. Let's go to it, and now I have my list. Okay, so I have avatars, I have names, I have emails, I have jobs, I have phone numbers. It's dummy data, nothing special, and this is the code that I received, or that I received from my HTTP GET call from my backend. Okay, but is there okay? Is there a way to test my HTTP part without backend part, like module to write and get data? I'm going to get back to it another later on. It's from explainer. I'll get back to it later on after explaining what is the scope. Here I am in the data controller, and the data controller, we're going to control, of course, a page. So let's go to the data.html, and how I found out, because I configured it here. So I said the slash data will going to show me a data.html page, and this data.html page will be controlled by a data controller. So now let's go to the data.html. Here I have a go back button, and I have a symbol or a simple table. Nothing fancy, a single table. I have like rows, and then I have another rows, I have the TDs or my data. Here I have another thing. So you might say that I returned an array. So this array, in order to get all the data hosted on my array, I have to loop. And in AngularJS, we have a single or a special directive or tags or attributes, if you want, called or named ngRepeat. So ngRepeat is a loop. It's like a for each loop. So user, our like local variable in users, and users gonna users from here, get users from here, scope.users. And what is a scope? Scope is a special variable, and this special variable got injected in the compile time. So AngularJS inject a scope variable in each and every page or in each and every view on compile time. So scope, we're going to host each and every variable or model we have in our view. Okay, so later on previously we talked about two-way data binding, and they said like I have a scope, now I have this thing. I have two-way data binding. So this is the thing that we're going to let me control my work. So in here I have another attribute called ng model, and it is a variable called test. Then I wanted to show it in here, so test. The ng model, we're going to create or make sure we have what we call the two-way data binding. So the ng model test, it is like a simple or like a local variable, and in order to show it, I have to create two brackets in here, the two things in here, and this thing, or this mustache like temple thing. But I can also have an access to it via scope.test. Okay, so let's say that I want to log it, scope.test. Now let's move back to my data so we can explain more what is the thing. It's not showing. It's not showing in here. Console.log scope the test. Okay. Okay, let me use another thing. Let's see, or let's suppose that I want a variable in my or in my controller that named by test, var test. Then, in order to have an access to it, I will need to do scope.test. Okay, and therefore I'm going to have everything that I have on my view in this variable. Okay. Okay. So this is the power of two-way data binding. I have data on my view. I have the data on my controller, and when I change this thing, it's going to change automatically on my view. And this is exactly what I did here, because I have a users array and I control it via the scope.users, and I give it the array or the object returned from my backend. Therefore, I have all this data. Getting back from my controller and also from my factory or data factory. I have another thing. We have two ways to get our data. We have the factory, and also we have a service. So the main difference between them is the writing manner. There is nothing difference between them but the writing manner. So most of people love to create factories because they are mainstream and very easy to recognize and work with. I don't know why, but they are exactly the same. Okay, now let's move or go back to another line of code that I didn't want to talk about it earlier, and it is the inject. So this inject thing, and also we have this writing manner, and we have another writing manner, like so. We have the inject, and or we have this writing manner, and we have the $ inject. Mainly, we use what we call dependency injection, because later on in our when we see release state or production state, developers tend to minify their code. So when you minify your code or your JavaScript code, local variables and variables are going to be shrinked in one letter. So let's suppose that I want to shrink my code. It's going to be look like so. And this thing will be done like so. Then my application or my AngularJS won't recognize the S thing because simply have no meaning. Therefore, we use dependency injection, because when we minify our code, it's going to be recognized via this injection. So Angular, we're going to map everything I have in here with the variables I have in here. Okay, so let's suppose that we have another V, I have another thing. Okay, so Angular, we come and say I have like a scope, and also I have another thing, data 1. So later on, my AngularJS or AngularJS framework code, we're going to map each and every variable or from S to V and then F, then map this S to the scope, this V to the data, and this F to the data 1. So it's mainly because developers tend to minify their code or uglify their code. Therefore, we use dependency injection. And it is in fact one of the conventions or the best practices in AngularJS. Okay, so now I think that we are done for the code, and now if you want we can move to some like questions, because this is the main stuff that exists in Angular 1, and it might be a bit confusing, or maybe I introduce it in a vague way, because the most important thing about AngularJS, like I said, is the terminology behind it. So if you mastered the basics of separation concerns and or everything that every module do a single thing, you wanted to create a nice application. But if you didn't, your application would be messy, and other developers, and of course you are going to work on a team, your team won't going to recognize your code because it is messy. Therefore, it is highly recommended to do separation of concerns in your application. Now, if you want, we can go directly to questions, or if you want to add something or anything at all, feel free to say it. Okay, so I have questions. Excuse me. Would you talk about AngularJS architecture before talking about controllers and views? It's important to mention that Angular 2 MVVM or model. Yeah, it is in fact that thing. It's the model view, whatever. But I didn't want to mess things up because design patterns are not like everyday developer tasks. Therefore, I tended to talk about it in general, then specify everything later on, inshallah. You see, Ayub? Other questions? Feel free to talk or say anything you want. All right. Is there any recommendation about Arbonisance organization in a large English? Okay, so Fuad, in large applications, we have many recommendations, and most of developers tend to write it like so. So I have this way of writing or thing that I tend to write my code using it. It's not that pragmatic, but it is a bit organized, because when I said to state home, I want to go to home, and within home, I want to find everything that home have. So from the view to the code and everything in beyond. Let me say that data, I have data, I have its the HTML page, I have another controller, and I have its factory. So my data or my files won't be messed up if I worked in a large file. Other developers tend to divide their code based on controllers. So each controller is on, or they take every or the applications controllers and put them in one folder, and take the factories and put them in one folder, etc. Other ones use the same approach I use, but for me, for my own sake or my own development ways, I use this kind of writing because I don't want my data to or my code to be messed up with other code. Okay, and also there is the name convention, because sometimes we can write code and we don't like figure out his meaning or the thing behind it. Therefore, there is lots of developers who tend to use the data or the name of the controllers, then use the camel casting and use controller or factory or service or whatever, because for their own sake. Also, you can use you can introduce many stuff from the VM dot like data dot controller and everything. So it's highly based on your preference and the way that you are more comfortable with. But if your company or your development have any writing convention, it is mostly or preferably to work using it because you are working on a team. But if you don't have, you can't work or agree with your team on a writing manner. Therefore, you're gonna win or have lots of time figuring each one codes. I use the lazy load module large Angular application test. So when we're going to test or using the BDD, most of developers use Protector. I didn't use it before, but it is in fact the most advanced or most used BDD manner that most developers love to use because it's easy and it's mainstream. So Protector, I guess, is the way to go in our days. Yeah. NG resources is good. NG resources is, in fact, quite good if you want to have more power. But if you are working in your everyday business application, and I have to say that AngularJS is used in most business applications, like I worked here, like me say, with tables, with data and everything. Simple HTTP code is more than enough because we want to handle data in a simple way, but it's only like preferences. If you want to use the NG resources, feel free to do so. Just be aware of its special syntax. That's all. Because the NG resources and the $sign resources and the HTTP is different on their syntax. That's the main difference between them. And also, NG resources give you lots and lots of power because you can create, I think, function within it, and you can customize your code within it. So it's power for most developers. Yeah. Any other questions?
La performance d'Angular, le rendu, etc. Qu'est-ce que vous dites par rapport à ça? La performance.
البرفورمانس تحكي عن البرفورمانس من أي ناحية؟
Côté rendu, parce que c'est framework front-end. Est-ce qu'il est performant si on compare avec d'autres frameworks? Par exemple, React, ou la Backbone, ou d'autres frameworks. Qu'est-ce que vous dites sur la performance?
Okay. Regarding the performance that I noticed using AngularJS, for me it's good, it's nice. And regarding React and Ember and Backbone, there is a slight difference between them, but it's mainly things of preferences, because like I saw on Stack Overflow, people who are using Backbone, they are working on the same functionalities and have all work with the same terminology beside Angular. So if there is nothing much in difference between them, but each one have its own writing manner And the thing with React, I guess that people now attend to React everything. So from simple widget to a large scale widget, React now people are using it and embracing it quite well. But for me, because I use Angular and I worked with Angular 1 and Angular 2, I didn't find any problems or performance issues with it. It is mainly about the scaling. So when we go to continuous integration with AngularJS, I found myself quite happy, because it is the same thing that goes back and back again. So I don't have to introduce new manners or new code or new stuff, just updating my code and everything will be okay. Also, because of my use to Ionic, I don't have to write double code. So I simply do copy and paste code pretty much everywhere, because Ionic use AngularJS. Therefore, in order to win more code or to win more or have more speed in my development process, doing cross-platform is nice. Okay.
Les directives peuvent être imbriquées, nested. C'est ça.
Directives. Okay. Regarding the directives, you can create one and you can nest one also. So in here, I can nest as much. Like, let me go to data. Okay, data. And here, so my directive can be nested as much as I want, and it won't be a quite problem for that. I tested and didn't find any problem with that, because sometimes I want to do a test, I do switches and do many stuff. So yeah, I didn't find the nesting of the directives is nice, and you won't find problem using it.
Dans ce cas, s'ils peuvent être imbriqués, il doit avoir une façon comment ils peuvent communiquer entre eux.
Exactly. Therefore,
كيفاش نقدروا نكومونيكيو entre les directives, soit كديريكتيف côté attribut ولا élément.
اوكي.
اسمح لي، باسكو انت وريت لي غير ديريكتيف اتريبيو، ما شفتش ديريكتيف élément. اسكو فهمتني؟
Oui, فهمتك.
Ok. Tout en sachant que je suis pas un utilisateur Angular.
Ok. Concernant les directives, like ماشي اللي نخدموا tant que attribut, mais les directives normales, we have what we call scope, and directives in its marks or using the markup or a single element, they have their scope. So we can underline the scope of can use the parent scope to create the scope of my new created or new introduced directive. So they won't be that much of problem, because I can use inherited scopes, I can use the parent scope, I can use everything I want. So there won't be much of a problem. And also, I worked mainly with tags like directives, because we are in a 1-1 introductory session. I don't want to mess things up. Okay? Because creating a directives, we're going to create like a markup. So we can name it whatever we want, and each markup has its own behavior and its own scope. So yeah, we can take scope, use scope, reuse scope, and take also the parent scope. And for the Chrome apps or extension, we use AngularJS in Electron, and it's using Electron. It's awesome for building this stuff. I didn't worked with Angular in Chrome apps. I didn't use it before, but I know in fact that AngularJS in Electron is very good, because I saw like real-time or real-time projects that use AngularJS within Electron, and the result was quite marvelous, I might say. So yeah, Ahmed, Angular with Electron is for some kinds of usage very recommended. And if you want to exploit all what Angular have to offer, you might simply use Angular on the top of your Electron application. Do you know any better framework for its data management do you use with AngularJS? I saw Breeze.js. I think it is depend on backend too. Regarding Breeze.js, I saw that it worked heavily with the backend, and it can be your third tier. But for heavy load data management, I didn't come across of any reliable one. But Breeze.js is for some kind of usage very recommended. Also, if you can create a scenario using or building business application, and it is the case if you are building like dashboards or things that have any relation with heavy data, Breeze.js can help you and work with you very effectively, especially if you are having an ASP like backend. I guess that service for it is very good. I suggest it is CanJS. Yeah, can work with CanJS. Yeah. So it's a matter of perspection, and it's a matter of usage. And before embracing any kind of framework or codes, you need to do your research and you do your homework, so you don't invest your time doing simply nothing, or doing wrong code or something that you're going to waste your time.
Connect CanJS, c'est pas le framework CanJS, c'est juste un utilitaire pour connecter n'importe quel API serveur, bon, RESTful beaucoup plus, avec n'importe quel framework JS, même avec un simple JavaScript.
Cool.
Vous pouvez le personnaliser juste avec quelques behaviors, avec le pattern mixing, et il sera mixé avec le comportement du connect.
Cool. Cool. Très bien. Thank you for sharing.
Ok. D'autres questions?
La scalabilité. Qu'est-ce que vous dites sur la scalabilité d'Angular? Parce que la plupart des gens qui me parlent d'Angular, une fois l'application تكبر يقول لك نتبحر خلاص ما نعرفش كيفاش نزيد نسكيلي l'application. Qu'est-ce que vous dites par rapport à ça? J'ai vu 5 personnes, j'ai parlé avec 5 personnes et كلهم يشكيوا من la scalabilité. Angular مش حسب ما قالوا لي اني pas bien في la scalability. Doesn't scale well.
Okay, I heard the same thing, and lots of people told me about it, but القضية تتبحر, it's all about how you write your code from the startup. So if you are using a well managed design patterns, if you are using a well methodology regarding the namings, regarding the codes, regarding everything, the scalability with continuous integration work very fine, and it's very well. I'm not defining AngularJS, but for me, regarding the scalability, worked for me just fine.
Pourquoi قلت لي continuous integration pas مع la scalability? Ce sont deux choses différentes pour moi. Je sais pas pourquoi. Ça c'est le premier point. Le deuxième point, je pense qu'on ne doit pas avoir les connaissances sur les design patterns pour faire une application. On peut pas obliger les gens. Ça c'est vrai. On doit avoir certaines maîtrises, certaines connaissances, mais aller jusqu'au design pattern, non. Ouais, non, ce que je reproche par rapport à l'Angular, pourquoi faire, pour moi, ce que je dis entre parenthèses, la publicité mensongère, de faire un Hello World le plus facile au monde, avec juste du HTML, alors que après la scalability, قاع يحصلوا فيها. Là, c'est deux choses différentes. Est-ce que vous m'avez compris?
وي فهمتك اكزاكتلي. حكيت على الديزاين باترنز، اوسو حكيت على المانيير اللي تكتب بها الكود تاعك مع الديبي كامل. خاطش كيما قلت لك حنايا بداها من نيمينغ، بداها حتى الكود تاعك كيفاش يجي داير. ثم انت في الابليكاسيون تاعك انت راح ديسيدي اسكو الابليكاسيون تاعك حتكون سكيلبل ولا مش حتكون سكيلبل. فهمني؟ بيكوز اف تكتب الكود تاعك سو اني معاك بلوبا تاع لي توتو، لا بيبار تاع الكورسز كاع يحكيو عفسه مين ستريم. هلو وورد ابليكيشن كيفاش دير كذا كيفاش دير كذا كيفاش دير كذا. but no one talks about scalability in depth. اني معاك كاع واش كاين. therefore الحكايه تاع انجولار جي اس مع السكالابيليتي ولا مع الهافي لود ابليكيشن تبقى فيها حكايه، فيها حكايه كبيره بزاف. because even if you want to use like other application with backbone ولا حبيت تخدم مع امبر ما حيصير لك ميم بروبليم تاع سكالابيليتي. انا بور مو باش نحل سكالابيليتي ديال الديبي نبدا كيفاش نكتب الكود تاعي مع الاول كامل، كيفاش نسمي حتى كيفاش نكتب الكود تاعي finishing by design patterns. C'est ça.
Ok.
Ok.
D'autres questions? Intégrer mot.
Ok. Good.
Ok, thank you. Bon. D'autres questions? D'autres remarques, suggestions? J'aimerais bien même à la fin on fait un genre de rétrospective sur les hangouts, savoir ce qui est bien, ce qui est pas bien, ce qu'on peut améliorer dans les prochains hangouts. So feel free utiliser les mics.
Allô?
Ouais.
Oui. Bah déjà merci à Hussam, c'est ça, pour sa présentation. Je pense qu'il aurait, enfin, c'est un avis personnel, mais à mon avis, enfin, une présentation sur Angular, ça aurait dû se faire sur plusieurs hangouts. Mais il a pu résumer à peu près comment dire, les points clés de la techno. Mais bon, déjà c'était très bien. Donc et après par rapport au hangout, bah en fait au départ, j'ai pas réussi à rentrer sur le hangout. Alors je sais pas comment ça se passe quand il y a du monde. Enfin ça c'est plus des questions d'organisation, mais bon là aujourd'hui je pense on était 10. Enfin plus tard je pense si jamais on est un peu plus dans les vingtaines ou enfin faudrait essayer d'avoir un chat qui engloberait aussi les personnes qui sont sur YouTube. Parce que du coup j'arrivais pas à dialoguer moi au départ parce que j'arrivais pas à accéder au hangout.
Mhm.
Ça c'était un peu un problème. Sinon ouais c'était sympa comme présentation.
Merci beaucoup, Fouad. Tout à fait. Hangouts, ça reste toujours à noter. Si on trouve un autre outil sera meilleur, pourquoi pas. Sinon, normalement, on laisse même la chance pour les gens qui suivent par YouTube de laisser des questions, soit dans la page de l'événement ou bien. Bon, je pense que Hangout désactive les commentaires de YouTube par défaut.
Ouais c'est ça.
Alors, les questions, généralement c'est dans le groupe ou bien dans la page de l'événement. On fait avec. Et généralement, on est comme ça, on est 10, on dépasse pas les 10 dans le Hangout. Aujourd'hui, on est entre 8 jusqu'à 15 personnes sur YouTube. Voilà.
D'accord.
Merci beaucoup. Ok, d'autres questions? Ok, ok, alors Merci beaucoup, Hussam. Thank you so much. Espérons qu'il y aura d'autres hangouts qui m'a pour maintenant.
يعطيك الصحة.
Inshallah.
Inch'Allah, why not. Ok, merci beaucoup. Merci à tout le monde. Je vous dis à la prochaine, Inch'Allah. Salam.